Hello, I'm David Broadbent and welcome to the Chaddy Enders. Thank you very much for tuning in as we now hit double figures in terms of episodes, episode 10. Fantastic stuff. As always, a huge thank you to our three sponsors, to AC Tyres, to NFL Weekends and to Eden Creative, all available on social media at NFL Weekends, at AC Tyres or at Eden Creative UK. A big thank you to all you guys. Your support is greatly appreciated. We move on to today's guest. And today's guest is, he's a bit of a legend. And if I'm being honest, a bit of a childhood hero of mine. He joined Latics in 1988, joining from Everton. He made 204 appearances for the club. He scored 40 goals. He was the top scorer in the season that we won the championship in 1991, before leaving Latics to join Ipswich in 1993. It is a genuine and absolute pleasure to be able to welcome today to the Chaddy Enders, Mr. Ian Marshall. Ian, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this week. Absolute pleasure to have you with us. First of all, how are you at the moment? How are things?
Yeah, good. As we said off there, I'm bored like most other people, I think. The lockdown's getting to everybody, so drinking too much and putting on too much weight. You know, the only exercise you get is walking the dog or going for a walk. So it's it's tough at the minute, but I'm in good health and I'm fine.
And prior to lockdown, you were working at Leicester City.
Yeah, I work in the hospitality. Meet and greet people and host a restaurant there, and talk about everything Leicester to the people who come and dine with us.
Not a bad time to be watching Leicester as well at the moment.
No, I mean they're very, they're a decent team at the minute. I mean, I'm not enjoying football. I know my heart goes out to all the Latics fans out there, which is even worse. But I'm watching it for the sake of watching it. I think it's a bit Mickey Mouse. And, you listen to the commentators going on about, they've got so many away wins and they haven't won at home. Well, it makes no difference. There's nobody there influencing how people think, how players think. There's no fans getting on their back or encouraging them or whatever. So for me, it's it doesn't matter whether you're playing home or away. It's just a game of football. And then when you take the sound, that we're over the television, when they take the crowd sound down, it's just, you just visualize a training ground game that you were involved in yourself years ago, where you don't put 100% effort in, and I don't believe the players are putting 100% effort in, because there's no one really that they're answerable to. There's no fans if you're giving away a slack pass or don't tackle someone or don't put 100% effort in chasing someone back, there's not really anybody other than your manager and your staff really getting on your back. So I don't think it's real football, in the sense that this is what it'd be like if there had been crowds back. I mean, it must be a fantastic time to be a young kid making your debut, because there's no pressure on you. There's no fan going to get on your back if you have a bad game. There's no one, no opposition fans going to taunt you. It's a weird time. It's got to be a great time to make, as you say, make your debut.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all a bit, I find it more, it's all a bit nice. There's no kind of needle as such with the players. They're all sort of hugging and handshakes and they're all best of friends. Whereas I think it is the crowd. If the crowd are there, then there's a bit of needle. There's a bit more sort of reaction to challenges and things like that.
There is, Brody, there is. But I still think over the last few years, it has gone a bit pantomimey and a bit, staged, choreographed. The choreography of the it's all, it's almost like the opening night down the West End every game. People are going down to put on a show that it's not about desire and commitment and passion anymore. It's about flair and acting and and making things look good and that sort of thing, which for me, it's not football.
So let's go back to football. Let's go back in time to the late 80s, and you arrived at Oldham from Everton. How did all that move come about? How did you end up at Boundary Park?
Well, when I was at Everton and I'd broken into the first team, And I was a Liverpool fan originally. Well, I am a Liverpool fan, but I was a Liverpool fan. But I signed for Everton because I thought I'd get a better chance of breaking into the team and making it, because Liverpool was so good. And just my luck, at the time I joined Everton, they won the league, they won the FA Cup, they won the Cup Winners' Cup, and they, probably had the most successful time over the years, which I'm very grateful for, because it was a great grounding for me when I was young, to work under Howard Kendall and Colin Harvey, who I do believe are two of the best coaches for young kids back then. It was wonderful, but because of their success, they went out. I was just breaking the team. I was originally started as a centre forward, but one time there was a game where they were short of a centre half, and I was a young kid, and he said, "Oh, play Marshy at centre half because he's big and tall." And it was a first team against reserves sort of thing, and they banged me in the reserves as centre, basically as cannon fodder sort of thing, because they were trying to work on the first team. And I did well. And from that moment on, they sort of they converted me into a centre half, and I'd done okay. But with their success, they went out and bought Dave Watson for £1 million from Norwich, who came straight into the team and obviously took my position that I was trying to get into, and they weren't going to drop Dave. So I was really, edging to move away, whether it be on loan or what, just to get some football, because I was getting to an age, I think I was 20, 21 or something like that. And, I do believe you've got to play football. I don't understand in these days now where you've got kids playing in the under 23s who are 23 and 24 years of age, and, in the Premier League teams, who've never played a first team game in their life. For me, it's all about playing football, and it don't matter. It does matter which level you play, where everyone wants to play at the highest level. But either championship or lower down, you just want to get games under your belt. So Joe came and watched. And to be honest with you, I knew not very much about Oldham, where they were or whatever. And I think it was Colin Harvey said to me, Joe Royals in the medical room, he wants to word with you about going out on loan. So I went in and met Joe, liked what he had to say, and pretty much I signed that night on loan, and went down. I had a day off, and I went down on the Friday, trained one game, and then played on the Saturday. It was quite funny, really, because that was my first meeting with Willie Donachie, and Willie's a great bloke, but he had strange training methods. And we went to a sports centre, and there was loads of table tennis tables out, and he said, "Right, we're going to play table tennis with no bat and ball." So exactly. So it was all about moving with Willie and responses and all this. It was quite funny. I mean, we had a laugh when we did it. But he used to do things like that for the whole time I was there. He had a very good friend of his called Lenny Heppel, who was a movement coach. And he was supple, and he was about 80 odd years of age. And I've never seen anybody as supple or loose as this man. He was amazing. And he used to work with him a lot. I mean, I remember one time we went to Lilleshall, and we got up in the morning, and it was like 6:30 in the morning. We all had to get up, and we were playing tennis with no bat and ball. It was just weird things like that I used to do. But no, and that's how I joined. And obviously, I can't remember, to be honest with you, I can't remember the first game. I might Swindon or Birmingham, maybe. I can't, maybe you can, I don't know. But I think we won it. And met the lads, and it was a great bunch of lads. I got on really well from the start. And I was on loan for a month, and then I think after 2 weeks, he asked me if I wanted to make it permanent, and I said, yeah.
How much of a culture shock was it coming from Everton and Goodison to walking into Oldham?
Well, it was a culture shock in the sense I never thought about it like that, though. This is for me the difference of then and now in football. I just wanted to play football, and I wasn't bothered. I wasn't bothered about the money, the wages, or anything like that. It was not important to me. I wasn't bothered about walking out onto Wembley and if it was raining, there was that river ran through the middle of the pitch and stuff, and it didn't bother me. It was all about, for me, it was all about the camaraderie, a bunch of lads, me being put in a spot where I was given responsibility by Joe, and which is more than I was at Everton. I was sort of like a young lad at Everton and not one of the main people. At Oldham, I was one of the main players, and I was given the responsibility, and that for me was what it was all about.
How did you cope with the plastic pitch, having played on grass, obviously at Everton? Was that a difficult change for you?
Not at all. I think anybody who can play football, who's decent at football, can trap a ball, can pass a ball, I think it's a perfect pitch. I mean, now pitches are totally different. They're all like plastic pitches, so to speak, now. But if you look back on some of the games, the away games, the home games when they ripped it up, and see the state of the pitch, you're not telling me that football, you could pass a ball on some of them pitches. Your pass was a good pass because of the bobbles and bumps and that. It was going all over the place. And, we do go on, it's real football and proper football, it's fine. But what I'm saying is, if you're on the plastic and you can't, you're passing a ball 20, 30 yards, if you can pass it, it's going to exactly where you put it. And I had no problem with it. I enjoyed playing with it. We had a sort of system. It was similar to, football today, is quick one touch, two touch stuff that we tried to do. And I had no problems.
So your arrival sort of coincided with the arrival of other sort of excellent young prospects at the time, people like Barrett, Paul Walrus, Dennis Irwin. How long had you been at the club before you thought, we're pretty good, we've got some potential here?
No, the first season I got there, I knew the players he was bringing in were really good. I was, mates with Dennis Irwin, and for me, probably the best right back, best full back in the last 30, 40 years, I think. It was great at Oldham. He went on to Manchester United and won all sorts, won everything pretty much, and was a fantastic, fantastic football player. We had Dale Barrett, who, again, brilliant player. Paul Warhurst came in, another great player. And Joe, he seemed to be able to get these players and develop them and put them in a system. And a lot of them went on to no disrespect to them, but went on to bigger and better things. And it was a fantastic time. So it wasn't long before we knew we were going to be, we were a decent team. And then I think that year where we had the cup runs, and we didn't make promotion, and we didn't win anything. It was a letdown, but we knew that the next season we were going to have a good go, and we knew, it was in our destiny if we wanted to get up, so to speak, because we knew we were decent. We knew we were one of the best teams in the league.
89-90, the start of a sort of crazy couple of years. You say that's the year of the cup runs, and then obviously the year after was the win in the league. When we spoke to Andy Ritchie, one of the things that he was sort of very, very big on was the team spirit and the sort of camaraderie within the group, and essentially that you were all a bunch of loose cannons.
Well, Stitch probably was the least of the loose. Well, he wasn't the least of the loose cannons, but he was quite, obviously he was a bit older than the rest of us. A couple of years older than us. So he was quite the sensible one. So he was on the sort of periphery of when we went out and had a mad day on the booze and stuff. He didn't come, or he'd come and have a couple and then he'd slide off and that. And so he was, it was a bunch of nutters when we got together. But it was such a great time. I mean, I've had some success in my football clubs, and I've had some great managers, but the time at Oldham was probably the best time as a crack with players and a group of players. And not everybody, everybody wasn't like that. It was just a sort of a core of us who were like that. Jobbo was a great player and a great lad. He was always a bit reserved, and his nickname was 00 because of 007. We used to call him James Bond. And he didn't live that close to Oldham either, so he didn't really go out that much with us. Andy Barlow, who was a local lad, he didn't really come out that much with us. He did come out on occasion, but there was a core of, say, myself, Rick, Addo, Milligan, Nick Henry, few others who that was the core who went out on the Tuesday clubs regularly.
You see, Tuesday club, that was something that Stitch told me I had to ask you about. He said that chances are that Joe Royle knew about it, but he tended to, because things were going well on the pitch, he managed it pretty well and turned a blind eye quite often.
Well, he knew, because what he used to do, he'd train normally, and then after the training on a Tuesday, he would take us aside and sort of give us a half hour extra of running us into the ground, because he knew what we were going to do. That, it was literally as soon as like we were in Bath changed, and we were getting lifts into Manchester or going into Oldham. We tended to try and stay away from Oldham because he knew every single nook and cranny in the place. So he probably knew every nook and cranny in Manchester where we used to go, but we used to try and avoid Oldham because we knew we'd get caught all the time if we went there. But I had some crazy times. It was just fun. I'm just so glad there was no mobile phones back then.
Yeah, quite. So 89-90, the year of both cup runs. Anything stick? I know we're sort of going back over 30 years, but anything stick in your mind, particularly from the two cup runs?
Yeah, probably one of my all-time favourite games was the semi-final, the first semi-final. It was. I remember watching the Liverpool Crystal Palace game, and it was 4-3, and I'm thinking, we're following this. So let's hope we put on a bit of show. It's half decent, it's half as good as this one. And it was, for me, that was probably the best ever semi-final day I've ever seen. And I was taking, it was everything you want to see in semi-finals. It was end-to-end stuff, both teams going for it, plenty of goals. It was a great day, and because Manchester United, they weren't the team that they became, but they were they were a Premier League biggest club in the world, so to speak, but not, they hadn't won the leagues and the cups and all that. That's sort of like the start of their success, but they still had, household names, England captains, full of international players, and it was still a game that we needed to be at our best to compete, and we did, and it was I still think we should have won in the replay, that disallowed shot that went over the line, but if ever you wanted VAR, that's the only time I've ever wanted it to be involved, or goal line technology.
So you scored in that semi-final. Do you remember a lot of your goals? Obviously, you scored a fair few. Are you one for remembering them all or not?
Not all of them. I remember some of them. When I see some of them, I remember them quite vividly. I remember that goal. I see it quite a lot as well. A lot of people post it on Twitter and whatnot, and I do see that quite a lot. But some of them that stick in my mind, your favourite goals from whatever clubs you were at and things like that. You remember them. Obviously, the hat-trick at Wolverhampton on the opening day of the season. I always remember that, and it always makes everyone asks, and it always tickles me because the first goal is so poxy, it's unreal, unbelievable. And it's funny because like Mike Stoll's the goalkeeper and coach at Leicester, so I see him quite a lot and all that, and I always rib him about scoring the hat-trick against him. And because I tried to hit it with my right foot, and I scuffed it and it hit my left foot and spun in the, you can see Mick Stoll diving across this way and the ball's spinning over the other way into the goal. But when you look at it on the TV, it actually looks like it's quite a decent goal, but it's a poxy goal. And then the other two goals are fantastic goals, do you know what I mean? And I always love the slightly biased Wolverhampton commentator, given that, he was just shell-shocked when he listened to that play on the TV or Twitter or whatever. He's just absolutely gobsmacked and shell-shocked. And that, them things stick in my mind. The others, obviously, I always remember the Notts County goal, the grass cutter, which is probably the best shot I've ever hit in my life. One of my favourite goals, in my career, top 5, obviously. I also remember, like it was yesterday, the promotion game at Ipswich, when the one that we won, because obviously I scored 2 goals in that. I always remember me and Rick and Addo sitting in the hotel, and we were playing cards and having a cup of tea and that before we went to our rooms. And we said, get a result here, and we're up in the big time. And we were so confident. We really felt we were gonna do it. And those goals remind me. And I just remember, like, that was a fantastic trip back. It was, you hated going to them places because you were so far away. But when you'd done something like that, you didn't want the trip to end. You know what I mean? It was amazing. Great times, really was.
I mean, you didn't have many sort of bad times at Oldham, but I guess missing out on Wembley through injury was probably the worst time.
That was the worst time, and the fallout at the end was bad. But because I was so desperate to play, and I do. You try and you don't want to inflate yourself or anything, but I do believe if I'd have played, we'd have won. And at the time we were playing so well when I was in the team, and it was working so well. I just think we'd have won it. And it was disappointing, and it showed me disappointment in the aftermath of it all when I kicked the door down in the toilets and fell out with Joe. He tried to hit me over the head with a chair, and it wasn't good times after that game after that.
How close were you to being able to play at Wembley?
Well, I felt fine in the morning, and I had a thigh strain, and I had a fitness test, and jogging and everything was fine. And then I just had to, we said, right, let's, go nearly full pace and see where. And as soon as I did that, it went again. I felt it go again, and then I just knew then it was. I wasn't playing. Yeah.
In the build up to Wembley, one thing I've got to ask about, recording Boys in Blue. Any recollections of that?
I do. I don't remember massively, but I just remember the day when we all went down to the studio, and Bobby Ball was there, and that, and I just, it was the shittest song on earth, wasn't it? It was, It was so bad, but you still, as a player and being involved in it, it was great to be involved in something like that, and it was funny, and it was a good day. It was a great time to be at the club, really was.
So after 89-90, you mentioned the first game of the promotion season, winning away at Wolves. I guess the season before we've come so close, we've just missed out on the playoffs. We've got to a cup final and a cup semi-final. Did you all come back that summer with an absolute determination that, right, we're going up this season?
Well, I don't know about a determination to say we're going up, but we all knew that we had a good team, and we all knew that we had a good enough team to win promotion and to get up. And, it's football's different now with the money involved and everything. But when you're in that league, every team is pretty similar. There's fine margins between the best team and the worst team in the Championship, I think. Not so much now with the teams who fall out, who come out the Premier League with all the money, but your bog standard team who hasn't been in the Premier League for a few years, and there's a very, very thin line between the top 6 and the bottom. And, that was the case, I think, in our league, is that we knew we had good players, and we knew we had a team that could win the league or get promotion was what we obviously ultimate aim was. Win the league was a bonus, but we knew we'd been close to the time before, and probably the cup games did have an influence on the run off at the end, because I think we had so many games at the end. Yeah, everyone was just burnt out, and I think I wouldn't swap it for the world, like the cup runs and everything, but I do think we were sort of burnt out at the end, and it was like just going through the motions in the end to try and just get the season out of the way. I think we played 60 odd games or something in that season. But we had a determination. There was definitely a determination there. And I thought we were definitely, we had a chance. I think, I'm right in did we play Barnsley away early doors as well in that season?
We did play Barnsley early, yeah.
And I scored and we won 1-0. And that for me was the game that I thought, this is our year, because we got battered and we scored late on in the game and nicked the 1-0 win away. And I thought, yeah, this is, the sort of the fate thing and all this. And that was what I thought then when we beat them. I thought, yeah, this could be our year, this.
And by that point, you're playing up front. How did that sort of conversation come about? When did you change? Because you originally signed at the club to, I think I'm right saying, you signed at the club to replace Andy Linnigan at the back. How did it come about that you ended up front?
I was just pestering Joe, like in training every day. Like I never played centre half in training ever. Even the moment I joined the club, I never, and I never thought I was a centre half. In my opinion. Joe will tell you otherwise. He always went on about if you'd have played centre half, you'd have played for England. I don't know. I always remember him coming to me one day in that year and saying to me, or the year before, can't remember, when I was playing centre half, and he said, Graham Taylor's here. He's watching you. Put on a decent performance. He's been watching you over the last few months. Put on a decent performance. And you're going to be in the squad this week. You'll be named in the squad. And we were playing Sheffield Wednesday. And it was obviously the season before, that it was the cup run season. And I had David Hirst in my pocket. No offence to David. We played really well. I played really well. He didn't get a kick of the ball. He was an England international at the time. So after the game, I'm thinking, well, I've definitely done enough if all this is true. Never heard the fucking thing. So, I thought, oh, bollocks to this. I'm going to play centre forward. I want to play centre forward. And I just badgered Joe all the time. As I say, I never played centre half in training, unless it was a static positional thing. But whenever we played football, I just played up front all the time. And I could score goals. You look at players, I mean, I remember John Robertson at Leicester, when he was coach, he said, you and Tony Cottee are the best finishers I've ever seen. And, you're playing at people like Trevor Francis and all this. It was, so I knew I could play up there. It was just, I think it was an injury crisis of some sort, or what Joe used to love doing was, when we were in a bit of trouble, he'd throw the centre half or me up front and play 3 up front or something up top. And I must have done all right. And anyway, I think it must have been an injury, because he wouldn't have done it otherwise. And then I did well, and it went on from there. I love if Joe thinks he converted me, because he didn't. Do you know what I mean? He didn't make me. In my mind, since I was like 5 years old, I was a centre forward.
Well, it worked out all right, because you were the top scorer the promotion season as well. You've mentioned the Ipswich game for promotion. What are your recollections of the Sheffield Wednesday game on the final day to win the league?
Well, for me, is the greatest football match I've ever been involved in. I mean, as a spectacle, the semi-final was great, a great game, but the final was the last game of the season was like a fairy tale. It was, you couldn't have wrote it better. It was the best outcome, the best scenario that I've ever seen, and the fans and the whole the whole occasion was just, it was quite, I look back now and it's quite overwhelming when you think about it. It was an amazing day. I mean, I remember I had my mum and dad, because my mum and dad, my dad's gone now, but they used to come. This is what I loved about Oldham. They used to come and watch me home and away. They knew all the away fans. They used to get on the coach. They'd drive up from Liverpool and get on the away fan coach to go to games with them. And, all the people knew them. And it was that sort of club. I mean, the first time I joined, used to, whether you played well or you played bad, we'd go up to the old Grey Mare at the top of the road and have a couple of pints in there. And you'd have the fans in there. And, if you'd had a good game, you didn't have to spend any money. If you had a crap one, you had to dig your hand in your pocket and buy your own beer. Do you know what I mean? But it was a fantastic club the way it was, and this is what hates me now. It's gone so far down. Like, we were in the Championship, the Division 2, whatever you want to call it, just the second league out, and there was a family atmosphere around the football club. Now, they're in the bottom tier, and there just seems to be no club fan interactiveness or anything. It's so distant and so, it saddens me to see. And getting back to the game, for me, it was just, Redders, that when he scored, the composure and the quality. He's a great player, Redders, very underrated. It just goes to show. I think he played over 1,000 games in his career. Yeah, so stuff like that is amazing. But he was ice cool, and full marks to him. And I remember the evening, bits of the evening. I remember being in Henry Africa's, being out my mind in there with my mum and dad. And it was fantastic. It was just a great. That was as I say, it was the most memorable game. I've played in a League Cup final and I've played in Europe, but that was the best game of my life. Not so much the performance either, because first half we got battered, and the second half, it was all hands to the pump sort of thing, and it was we grinded it out. It wasn't a virtuoso performance by us at all. But as I said, it was similar to the Barnsley game, when you just think it's your destiny, something's going on here that you're gonna do it.
And then for the first time, I think it was in 68 years, the club were in the top division, the final season of the old Division 1. How did you find the sort of step up from Division 2 to Division 1?
I didn't have a problem. I didn't think most of the lads had a problem. The trouble is, you've got you play at a level and you go up another level, but then you're playing against some players who are another level above you. Not everyone. Your run-of-the-mill teams are all the same. Your Everton back then, and your QPRs and your Newcastles and all these sort of teams are the same. But your Man United and your Arsenals, they were like on another level. They were just really, really good. And but I don't see. I always knew I could score goals, and one of the hardest things is creating goals when you get promoted. I think any team that comes up, they struggle to score goals. You can, in the way football's gone now, you can really make a plan to not concede and keep, be tight at the back. But the problem is scoring goals. And that's why, if you look at when teams go down or whatever, they generally got an half decent, unless they get, but you like your Burnleys and teams like that, they've got a really, really good defensive plan, but they struggle to score goals. But where they seem to do is they nick 1-0s against the teams, around them, so they stay up. Whereas your other teams who go down generally lose that game. They're the ones who get done. But when they're playing these sort of teams, they're not usually getting turned over, 4 or 5. It's usually a 1-0 difference. But when you come up against your Man Cities and your Chelseas and your Liverpools of the world, that's when the concentration's got to be full marks. But personally, I didn't find it too difficult. I just wish I don't enjoy the way football's played now. I don't, this tippy-tappy, it bores me to death. It really does. A lot of the time it bores me to death. And watching these teams play out from the back and give it away and concede a goal, or play out from the back, have 5 or 6, 8 passes and then launch it up to the top and thinking, well, why didn't you just do that in the first place? That's what you're going to do. Or, sometimes you just do it straight away. It just intrigues me, football now. I think it was a lot more entertaining back then, even in the 70s and whatever. I think football was more entertaining. the trouble with football now is it's so big business. It's so, with the new big wigs wanting to take over the Champions League and never get relegated out. For me, I wouldn't watch it. I just wouldn't. I don't watch that much Champions League or Europa League anyway. But it's football's moving away from the fans, and the trouble is the fans don't really. Sadly, they're so wrapped up and they love their football club that they'll still, just Oldham's a prime example. There's probably 99% of the fans are unhappy at Oldham, but there's still a large percentage of people would go and watch them tomorrow if the gates were open and there was a game on. But they still, the only people who can change football is the fans. It's true, even to the degree of when you're at home, stop watching it on the telly. The only thing that's all you can do. It's the only way you can have a say in the matter. But getting back to the game, digressing there. But getting back to the game, it was just the greatest game I played in. For what was, the end story when obviously our game went into like overtime because of the penalty and the fans on the pitch and all that, and hearing that like West Ham had lost and they'd been given the trophy because we were losing and or drawing or whatever, so they'd think they'd won it. And I think the rules got changed that day because they actually thought, Ian Bishop was my mate who played for them, and he tells me they gave them the cup, the trophy. So it was brilliant. It was a brilliant day.
And some party for the next few weeks after, I imagine.
Yeah, well, yeah. As I say, I don't remember. I remember getting to Henry after, because I don't remember much what happened after that. And then obviously it was the wonderful thing was it was the last game of the season, so you could celebrate. I think I usually used to go on holiday pretty quickly straight after the end of the season. So, but I'm sure we had a few days on the piss.
I think, you probably did. I'd imagine so after an achievement like that.
Yeah, definitely.
You were then up in Division 1 and then founder members of the Premier League. You say that you didn't necessarily struggle with the transition, and the stats had certainly backed that up, hitting double figures in your first season in Division 1. And again, I guess just a continuation of, we were never a sort of top team in Division 1 in the Premier League, but it was always entertaining. We always set out to score goals, and I imagine the next couple of years were all right as well.
Yeah, they were okay. The one thing that I felt, me personally, and what's changed a lot, is when you get injured, you were sort of rushed back into play and stuff like that, and whereas now, a little niggle, you're off the pitch, you're rested, and it's rotation, which I'm not a big fan of rotation anyway. But, I do believe you should play your best 11 people week in, week out. And then, if they get injured or they have a loss of form, then bring somebody else in. But, you should play your best team, especially in lower leagues. Premier League, they've got a lot of good players and they can do that. But lower league, you should do that. But no, I just think that the transition's fine. I just think that you looked after better now, in the football world, and obviously Joe's was always trying to bring in players to improve the team, and that's when I sort of we started to. He brought in Ian Olney, whether you liked him or you didn't like him. Joe at the time preferred him than me, and that's when I started to, well, Joe would probably say otherwise at the time, but I just wasn't happy because I was being overlooked, sort of thing, and I'd been there a long time, and I didn't think I was getting really the fair crack of the whip, if you know what I mean. Sharpie had come in. I had no problem with Sharpie, played with him quite a lot up front and that. But it seemed to be And then he brought Darren Beckford in as well. And I was sort of getting pushed out, but not actually getting pushed out, which was annoying. I'd rather him come to me and said, you know, we're done now, move on. But he didn't. And it just got a bit nasty, if you know what I mean. I mean, the last game of the season, the one we did the miracle, the Southampton game, and I was substitute, and I came on, and the thing that got me was that we'd done it, and and then he made me play in the reserves on the Tuesday, and the season was over. Do you know what I mean? It was done, and I just remember taking the piss then that day. I remember we had John Allworth in goal, and John was a great goalkeeper, but it just when the rules had changed about you couldn't pick the ball up from back passes and stuff, and John went great on the deck. And I was just like, the pitch was, because obviously it was grass then, but it was like brown. It weren't like the pitch. Yeah. I was like, went back passes to him. I was hitting them high up in the air and having them bounce on the floor, and he was struggling. And obviously Joe was watching. And after that game, as soon as the game was finished, the first team coach or the reserve team coach said, Joe wants to see you in his office now. So I went to his office, and we pretty much had a blind and row. And I told him that I didn't want to play anymore for him and whatnot. And that was probably the end of. That was the end. I remember going home, and then a couple of weeks later, he was I remember because it was that afternoon. I was going on holiday, and he phoned me up and said, Ipswich have come in for you. We've agreed a fee, and John Lyle wants to speak to you. And I just said, fuck off, I'm going on holiday. I'll speak to you in 2 weeks. Put the phone down and went. And then as soon as I came back, there was another phone call. And I said, I'll go down and see him. And I went down, and the rest is history. And then the first game of the season, the following year, which I remember doing the shooter McGavin at him on the bench. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, we didn't speak to each other for probably 4 or 5 years, and then I was at the PFA do in the Grosvenor, and he was on a table, and I was with the lads on our table, and I'd had a few drinks and whatnot, and I just went up to him and said, you know, let's put it under the bridge, sort of thing, and we've got on ever since then. It was done and dusted, but that's football. I mean, I don't hold any. I didn't say I didn't hold a grudge. I did hold a grudge because I felt I was better than the players he was picking, and you know, he obviously had his own opinion.
So we've got a few people have sent questions in to put to you. So we'll go with them. John Hanley. So out of you, Roger Palmer, Frankie Bunn, and Stitch, who was the best?
That's easy. It was me. But I would say Stitch was the best finisher I've ever played with. And I've played with some decent football players, but he was the best finisher I'd played. Bunny was a great lad, great worker. And Rog wasn't a particularly brilliant footballer, but he could score goals. He was, he knew to be in the right place at the right time, which is a fantastic attribute to have when you're a goal scorer. You know, he wasn't, you could watch Roger and not know he was on the pitch and he'd score 3 goals or 2 goals. You know what I mean? He was that sort of player. Fantastic. He knew where to be at the right time. But if that was a silly question. It was always going to be me.
Graham would like to know, out of all the players you played with at Oldham, who would you say was the most underrated of all the players that you played with?
Underrated, I'd say there's 2 players I'd say were underrated. First one I'd say was Nick Henry. I don't think he got anywhere near the accolades he should have done, and he should have played. You know, he could have played at a better. When I say a better club, don't get me wrong. I mean a bigger club, a more successful club. I think he could have done. And also Andy Barlow, I'd say didn't get the recognition he deserved, because he was a really decent left back, and don't think he got, because of the team. I think the team was laden with some really, really good players, and myself as well. I should have played for England. Ask Joe.
Well, Graham Taylor was watching you, so
yeah. So believe.
Peter would like to know, did you have a favourite player or team to play against that when you saw him you thought, yeah, I'm good today?
I probably did, but I wouldn't say anyone stuck out. I used to hate playing Notts County. Bizarrely, I scored that goal. But like a player I used to hate playing against, because he always seemed to get the upper hand on me, was Craig Short. When he was at, and I don't know why. I mean, I'm trying to think of teams I scored plenty of goals against, but no, I mean, I just look forward to every game. There wasn't a team I thought, oh, these are whipping boys sort of thing, and we're gonna, beat them. The funny thing was, the team I used to look forward to playing against whoever in the tunnel, when I saw what people came, when we were on the plastic, what people came out in, what footwear they came out in. That was when I used to decide, we're just going to take the piss here, or we'll have a tough game. Because some people, I always remember we played Bournemouth, I think it was, and I'm standing in the tunnel, and I used to wear, I can't remember, they were Adidas or Puma, but they had the really tiny little pimples on the bottom, the little studs, but rubber studs. I used to wear them, and they were quality. So I'm standing in the tunnel, and I'm looking across. I was last out all the time, and I stood and looked at the lad at the back, and he had a pair of Dunlop Green Flash on. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, this is a formality. Yeah, we're going to piss it, and we did. But yeah, you could. The pitch was rock hard, and some people would come out and they'd have like aluminium studs, screw-in studs in their boots, and you're just thinking, nah, you're done, mate. And then people would come out in trainers, and people would come out, you just knew when you looked at people's footwear generally how the game was going to go.
Okay. Are you still in touch with any of the lads from your time there? Are you still friends with anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see nowhere near as much as them. I've seen Stitch a few times. So they do a few Q&As up in Oldham. Big mates with Tony Feeney and Cole Moore and that. And I see Stitch quite a bit. I talk to Rick Holden. I talk to Nick Henry a bit. Other than that, I haven't really seen much of the lads since then. It's been weird times, really. I've seen Addo over the years. I've seen Millie over the years, but not really kept in touch. Which is, I always say we should have a Tuesday club, and let's get the band back together. Do you know what I mean? For one day, at least once. But hopefully we will in the future. I think, is it 30 years this year?
It'll be, this season's 30 years since the championship win, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we should organise something and get something together. But I see some of them. I see Stitch probably the most.
Okay. So we've gone with underrated player. Best player at Oldham that you played with?
It'd probably be Dennis. Dennis was brilliant. If you put him into little boxes, as I say, Stitch was the best finisher I've ever seen. Paul Warris was a quality player, but I would say Dennis was the best player I played with.
Okay, and the final question from people that have messaged in from Rick: how do you think you would get on with your style of play in today's game?
Well, this is the. You see, a lot of people ask me this or ask this of my era of player. And I would just say, and I always say, if you were the best player then, you'd still be the best player now. You'd adapt to the way people want you to play now. You know, but you'd still be, you know, I'd still be the player I was then, only I'd be playing a different style of football because I would. So, you know, I don't see, there's not like another crop of footballers back then who, if they'd have played like this, they play today, would have played, you know, all the players back then wouldn't have played. It'd have been a different set of people. It's just not true. The best players then would have been the best players now. You know, we wouldn't have drank as much like we did, and we wouldn't, you know, but you wouldn't, because you're not allowed to now. If you want to be a football, you'd adapt to what you know. It's just, whether you say progression or whatever, that's just the way it is. So I think, you know, obviously you wouldn't be able to elbow people and tackle people like you used to do. You know, I always remember, you know, if they had a decent footballer, they had a good player, you always thought to yourself, right, I'm going to go through the back of him on the halfway line as early as I possibly could. And, you know, you want to put him off his game. You'd get red carded now for that. You'd be off after a minute. Whereas then you didn't even get booked. You know, you knew you had one in your locker. You still had another one in your locker, but you'd put him off because he had a dead leg or a dead calf, or, you know, you twisted his ankle slightly or something. So, but you wouldn't be able to do that now. So you'd have to adapt. But I do think, you know, players back then would adapt to how they play now. It's the best players then would be the best players now.
Okay. And the final question, we ask the same final question to everyone, and I appreciate it is possibly a difficult question. If you had to pick one memory from your time at Oldham as your best memory at the club, what would that be?
Ooh, it's got to be the Sheffield Wednesday game. When that final whistle went and the fans invaded the pitch and we were getting picked up, and the whole euphoria of that moment. I don't think it. Well, you know, I played for over 400 and odd games. Never ever experienced that. You know, that feeling. So it was. You know, it wasn't difficult to answer. That's, you know, I've had great individual moments, like scoring the 2 goals at Ipswich to get us promotion. That was a great individual thing. The hat-trick against Wolves was a great individual thing. But if you're talking about a whole moment, an episode, it's got to be that Sheffield Wednesday game.
Perfect. That is a brilliant place to leave it. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's been fantastic to look back at your life at Latics.
Pleasure, Brody. Cheers, pal.
A huge thanks to Ian for joining us this week. Some great insights into his time at Latics. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. Over the next few weeks, our guests will be Alan Hardy, which will be a 2-part special, I would imagine, covering his 30 years at the club as commercial manager during the 80s and early 90s, and then his time as chief exec from 1997 through to 2012. I imagine Alan's got some great stories. Also, in the next few weeks, we have Wayne Hurst, who is the man behind the mask. He spent a long time at the club being Chaddy the Owl, and he tells me that he's very much seen things. So that'll be an interesting one. And also, Robbie Simpson joins us. Robbie once scored a fantastic goal at the Cop that put us in the lead at Anfield. So looking forward to catching up with Robbie. Again, thank you to everyone for watching or listening. A big thank you to AC Tyres, to NFL Weekends, and to Eden Creative, and also to Luke for doing all the technical stuff that I'm incapable of. If you want to get hold of us and put any questions to any future guests, or indeed make any suggestions for people you'd like to see, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at the Chaddy Enders. It'd be great to hear from you. And once again, thank you very much for listening, and cheers to Ian Marshall.